my daughter's wedding," she whispered loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, and a few turned to look, smirking. That was the moment something inside me gave way. Quiet, but final. "My name is Marion Hale. I am 66 years old." I had arrived at the Rosedale estate holding on to a small hope that somehow, despite the tension of the past years, this day might soften what had hardened between us. Avery was my only child. I wanted to believe there was still a place for me in her life, even if it was only a corner of this grand celebration she had built with such determination. When the ceremony music paused and a wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd, I looked up, expecting to see Avery adjusting her veil or smiling nervously before walking down the aisle. Instead, she lifted her chin toward me, just enough for her voice to carry. "That is not a mother," she said, her tone bright and sharp. "That is an embarrassment." The words struck with a precision that could only come from someone who knew exactly where my softest place had always been. Then came the laughter, first scattered, then swelling. A ripple of amusement across faces I had never seen before. Even Avery allowed herself a small, triumphant smile, as though she had just corrected a mistake the world needed to witness. I did not move at first. My hands stayed folded in my lap, steady in a way my heart was not. I met my daughter's eyes. She did not look away, so I stood, slowly, carefully, as if each movement required its own breath. The guests fell quiet, waiting for me to protest or crumble or plead, but I did none of those things. I walked between the rows of chairs, past the photographers adjusting their lenses, past the floral archway Avery had chosen after 4 months of planning, and past the young ushers who stepped aside without knowing what to say. Some guests looked surprised, but no one stepped in. At the edge of the lawn, I paused long enough to hear the music begin again, louder than before, as if they wanted to swallow the silence I left behind. I kept walking until the laughter, the music, and the weight of that moment thinned into something distant. Later, people would call it dramatic, some would call it selfish, but leaving was neither. It was the first honest step I had taken in years, and it carried me straight into the past I had tried so hard not to revisit. I didn't go far after leaving the wedding. I sat in my car with the engine off, hands shaking just enough to betray what I refused to show outside. And as often happens when something breaks, my mind went backward instead of forward. I became a mother at 27. Avery's father left when she was 5, promising weekend visits he never kept. I worked at the university cafeteria during the day and cleaned offices at night. Every bill felt like a test I had to pass to keep our small life from slipping apart. Avery never complained out loud, but she noticed everything. When I handed her thrift store jeans instead of new ones, she'd fold them slowly, like she was touching someone else's life. When I missed her school play because a coworker called out and I couldn't afford to lose a shift, she said, "It's okay, Mom." But she stopped leaving the programs on the kitchen table for me to see. By middle school, her friends lived in bigger houses on the west side of Madison. I still remember one afternoon when I picked her up from a birthday party. The other mother greeted me at the door with a smile just a little too polite, and Avery's face tightened. "Mom, can you wait in the car next time?" she whispered on the way out. "It's just easier. Easier for who I asked." She didn't answer. When she turned 16, she started working at a clothing store and buying things she thought would make her fit. One night, she came home with a designer jacket. "Did you win the lottery?" I joked. She looked at me seriously, as if joking wasn't appropriate. "I bought something nice for once." "Can you not make it weird?" I stepped back. "I'm glad you like it." But she'd already walked to her room and closed the door. Little by little, gratitude turned into distance, then distance into quiet resentment. By the time she met Evan Rosedale, she didn't just want a different life, she wanted proof she'd escaped the one I gave her. And somehow, I'd let her believe escaping meant leaving me behind. I met Evan's family over dinner in Milwaukee. Avery hovered close to Paige, mimicking her tone and confidence. Paige greeted me with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Avery told us so much about you," she said. "You two live on the east side of Madison, right?" "Very quaint." Avery nudged my arm lightly. "Mom, Paige's family has lived in this house for 3 generations. Isn't that amazing?" I nodded. But Paige continued before I spoke. "Evan grew up around ambition. We value presentation, stability, forward movement." She looked at Avery with approval I hadn't seen from her toward me once. "Evan joined us, trying to soften the air." "Avery said you worked at the university for years. That must have been meaningful." "It paid the bills," I said gently. Avery cut in fast. "Mom's being humble. She's always been practical." Practical, a word she once used with pride, now sounded like an apology. During dinner, Paige tapped her fork. "Avery's bringing such potential into the family. She understands our pace." Avery straightened, glowing under the praise. "I want a life that matches who I'm becoming." She straightened, glowing under the praise, ignoring me later. As she walked me to my car, she whispered, "Try harder to make a good impression next time, okay?" That was the night I realized she wasn't just marrying Evan. She was choosing their world over ours, and she was willing to leave pieces of herself behind to fit inside it. The night before the wedding, I arrived at the rehearsal early, hoping to catch a quiet moment with Avery. Instead, I stopped just inside the hallway that led to the dressing rooms when I heard her voice sharp, hurried, trying to impress. "Paige, please don't worry about my mom. She said, she means well. She just doesn't fit in settings like this." Paige let out a soft laugh. "Darling." She wore that cardigan and modest outfit to the engagement dinner, looking like part of the staff. Avery laughed too. I told her to dress nicer. But she thinks anything clean is fine. She doesn't understand presentation. She doesn't have to attend every event. Paige added, "Some families choose limited participation when there's disparity." "I know," Avery murmured. "I'm trying to manage her." Evan's relatives notice things. A chair scraped lightly. Avery shifting. "I just don't want people judging me because of the way she lives. The tiny house, the old car, the everything." My breath caught. Paige lowered her voice. "But not enough. She's sweet, but she looks like she stepped out of a donation bin. Guests might assume she's financially dependent on you." Avery exhaled, frustrated. "Exactly. I've worked so hard to become someone they take seriously. I can't have her undo it." The words hit like a slow, heavy wave. Not shouted, not emotional, just honest in the worst way. I stepped back into the shadows, hoping they wouldn't see me, but couldn't help catching a few words. My throat tightened. Not from shock I'd suspected this shift in her, but from the confirmation of how far she'd gone. When Avery emerged minutes later, smiling at seeing me, her voice bright, I matched it. "Mom, you're early. I didn't want to be late," I said, letting the smile sit calmly on my face. Inside, something settled. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity. Quiet and unmovable. I didn't leave the ceremony lawn right away. I moved slowly, partly because everyone was staring, partly because I needed a moment to steady what was left of my breath. Near the catering tent, 2 staff members whispered behind clipped smiles. "They still haven't cleared the deposit." One muttered, "The florist called twice this morning." The other said, "If they don't pay today, she's pulling half the arrangements." I kept walking, but the words lodged themselves beside everything Avery had said the night before. The Rosedales presented perfection, but the cracks were showing, thin and quick like ice splitting under weight. By the refreshment tables, I noticed a quiet argument over payments, but I kept walking. The man hissed back, "Keep your voice down. We'll handle it after the ceremony." I stepped toward the gate, and the air shifted. The music behind me rose again, loud and bright, as if the volume could erase my exit. Someone called my name, but I didn't turn around. Humiliation wasn't the reason for my steps. Not anymore. Something heavier had lifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to stand still while someone my own daughter decided what I was allowed to be. At the edge of the property, I paused only once, listening to the muffled cheer starting up again. They'd stitched over the gap I left, but the seams were weak. I walked to my car, locked the door behind me, and let the quiet settle. Whatever had pushed me out of that wedding wasn't shame. It was the realization that the life Avery wanted was already shaking under her feet. I woke early the next morning. Long before the sun reached my windows, my phone buzzed on the nightstand once, twice, then a steady stream of missed calls. I didn't touch it. I brewed coffee instead, steadying my hands around the warm mug before finally checking the first voicemail. "Mrs. Hale, this is the event coordinator from Willow Crest Estates. We need to discuss the outstanding balance for yesterday's ceremony. The Rosedale's payment didn't go through. Please return our call." The second voicemail came from the caterer. Our invoice bounced. "We were assured funds would clear by Friday, but nothing's come through. We'll need immediate resolution." Another from the florist. "Half the payment was reversed this morning. If we don't receive confirmation by noon, we'll be pursuing legal action." By the time I reached the fifth message, I sat down. Earlier alerts had indicated some delays, but now the pressure was urgent. "Your daughter's in-laws promised payment weeks ago. I won't wait any longer." I didn't know whether to feel alarmed or unsurprised. Yesterday's whispers suddenly snapped into place. The screen lit up again, this time with a news alert. "Rosedale Construction under state investigation for falsified safety inspections, unpaid subcontractors, and possible fraud." It mentioned project shutdowns in Milwaukee and Dane County. Millions in halted contracts. Lawsuits pending. A soft knock sounded at my front door. When I opened it, my neighbor, Trish, held out her phone. "Marion, is Avery all right?" "This is everywhere." On her screen, a headline scrolled across a local station broadcast. "Wedding of Rosedale heir overshadowed by financial scandal." A photo of the estate flashed behind the reporter. Guests were shown leaving early, confusion on their faces. Trish lowered her voice. "People said the groom's father left the reception halfway through to take calls. Some vendors showed up at the estate this morning demanding payment." I thanked her and closed the door, leaning against it for a moment. My phone vibrated again, Avery's name now filling half the screen. Then her text appeared. "Mom, please pick up. Something's wrong. Everything's falling apart." The life she chased with such certainty was unraveling faster than she expected. And for the first time in years, she was reaching toward me not with superiority, but fear. Avery called again while I stood in the kitchen, my phone lighting up over and over until the sound felt like pressure behind my ribs. I finally answered. "Mom." Her voice was thin. Nothing like the confident tone she used at the rehearsal dinner. "Evan's gone. He left early this morning. He said he needed space and he's not answering anyone." I kept my voice steady. "Where are you now at the Rosedale house?" "Paige won't talk to me. Gordon's yelling at people on the phone. Vendors keep showing up. They want payment we don't have." Her breath hitched. "Mom, they're saying the ceremony isn't even legally filed because the officiant refused without a deposit, so the wedding never happened." I said quietly. She didn't argue. "Everything's a mess. The bank froze Gordon's business accounts this morning. Reporters are outside. I don't know what to do." I let her speak until the frantic edge softened into something closer to fear. "Mom, can you come here?" she whispered. "Please. I don't know who else to call." I closed my eyes. For years, She'd pushed me away bit by bit, reshaping herself to match the Rosedale's expectations. Last night she mocked me before 300 guests. But this voice, the one trembling on the edge, belonged to the daughter who used to curl up beside me during thunderstorms. "What do you need from me, Avery?" I asked. She exhaled shakily. "Talk to the venue, the caterer, the florist. They're sending legal notices. Paige says I should handle it since I planned the wedding, but I can't. I don't understand any of the paperwork," and she just walked away. I reached for a chair and sat down. "I can help you understand things," I said slowly, "but I won't fix what isn't mine to fix." Silence. Then a small, fragile, "I know." Another call buzzed, an unknown number. Vendor, most likely, but I stayed with her line. "Mom," she said softly, "will you still come?" I didn't give an answer yet. I wasn't sure which part of me she was reaching for, the mother she ignored or the one she needed now. And I wasn't sure which one I could be for her anymore. I drove to the Rosedale house in silence, letting the weight of everything settle. When Avery opened the door, her eyes were swollen, her hair still pinned from yesterday. She looked less like a bride and more like a child who'd run out of places to hide. "Mom, thank you for coming," she whispered. I stepped inside without touching her arm. "Where do you want to talk?" She led me to a small sitting room. Papers were scattered across the coffee table, contracts, invoices, letters marked overdue. She sat, twisting her fingers. "I messed everything up," she said. "Evan's family, they keep blaming me. Paige says I embarrassed them by not managing you better. Gordon says I should have handled payments. I don't even know what half of these forms mean." "You called me because you're scared," I said. She looked up sharply. "I called you because you're the only person who ever stayed, even when I didn't deserve it." I sat across from her. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." Her throat tightened. I know I hurt you. I get so afraid of looking small. Their world is so polished, and I wanted to fit. When Paige said things about you, it felt easier to let her think she was right than defend you, and have them judge me too. "So you judged me first?" I said quietly. She didn't argue. "I've been ashamed of where we came from, of how little we had. I thought if I distanced myself, people would respect me more. You think I lived modestly because I had no choice?" I said, "But I saved every spare dollar. I built stability slowly. I just didn't broadcast it." Her eyes widened. "You saved all this. All those years I had priorities. You were one of them." Avery covered her face with both hands. "I treated you like you were holding me back." I leaned forward, not touching her yet. "You treated me like I didn't belong in the life you wanted." She lowered her hands, tears streaking her cheeks. "I don't want to lose you." For the first time in years, she wasn't performing. She was simply my daughter broken open, waiting to see if I'd still choose her. Avery wiped her face, waiting for me to promise something I couldn't offer. I sat beside her, keeping my voice steady. "I'll help you understand what needs to be done," I said. "But I won't pay the bills for this wedding. That's yours to face." She nodded slowly, though her eyes flickered with fear. "Paige said vendors should wait. She keeps pretending things are under control. But Gordon's office called. There are lawsuits coming. Construction sites are shutting down. That's their mess." I said, "Not yours, but the vendors you hired. You need to speak to them yourself." Avery swallowed hard. "Apologize. Yes, and arrange payment plans if you can. They worked for you in good faith." She looked down at her hands. "They'll hate me. They'll respect honesty more than silence." Voices rose from the house, arguments about payments. Calls from lawyers, but I stayed focused on Avery. The polished world they'd shown her was unraveling thread by thread. Avery flinched. "I thought being part of this family would make everything secure. You mistook image for stability," I said gently. "It happens." She let out a shaky breath. "Mom, if I do all this, will you stay? Not fix things. Just Be here while I try. I considered her. The woman she'd fought so hard to become, and the girl beneath it who was finally reaching toward the truth. I'll stand beside you, I said. But I won't stand in front of you. Her shoulders dropped in relief. For the first time, she understood the difference. Now she had to decide if she was willing to live it. In the weeks that followed, Avery did what I never expected she followed through. She called every vendor herself, voice shaking but steady enough to take responsibility. Some yelled, some cried, some simply said they appreciated the honesty. She arranged payment plans, picked up extra shifts at a local boutique, and met with an accountant to understand what rebuilding would actually look like. One evening, she sat across from me at my kitchen table, her hair pulled back, her hands ink-stained from signing documents. I started therapy. She said, I want to understand why I treated you the way I did. I nodded. That's a good place to start. She hesitated. I know you're being patient with me, but I don't expect you to forget what I said at the wedding. I'm not interested in forgetting, I replied. I'm interested in whether you grow. She looked down, letting the truth land without resistance. Growth was slower than apology, and she finally understood the difference. The Rosedales faced mounting lawsuits. Gordon stepped back from some responsibilities, and Paige withdrew from social events. No one mentioned the wedding again. My own life grew quieter in a way that felt like breathing for the first time. I joined a reading group at the library. I started morning walks. I turned 66 with a small brunch shared with neighbors who had become more family than most blood ties. My days grew quieter, each morning feeling lighter, as if I could finally breathe again. Avery visited on Sunday afternoons. Not every week, not perfectly, but honestly. She helped in the garden, asked about my books, sometimes just sat beside me without filling the air with excuses. One Sunday, she touched my hand lightly. I'm trying, Mom. I know, I said, and I meant it. If this story found its way to you, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe so more people can follow the next chapter of healing and truth. In the end, dignity returned quietly exactly when I chose it.